You know what I like? I like helicopters. You know what else I like? Photography. Let's talk about both of those today. It's gonna be a good day. Stay tuned. What's up, guys? My name is Tiff Getty. I'm a pro photographer and helicopter pilot, and I am here to teach you everything I know. Welcome to my channel. It is a beautiful day here in Kansas, clear blue skies and little to no wind. I wish I were in the sky right now. And that brings me to today's video. Spring and summer are definitely the most popular times for people to take photography flights. Because of that, I wanted to cover my top tips for maximizing your time when doing an aerial photography flight, and how to be a good passenger so you don't piss off your pilot and everyone has a safe and productive flight. It's best to maximize your time, and it's best not to piss off your pilot because that flight can get a lot shorter. Some of these tips may seem pretty common sense to you guys, but they're a product of me both being a photographer and shooting out of helicopters all the time, as well as me being a helicopter pilot. So some of them, although simple, I probably wouldn't have thought of just as a photographer going up, but are abundantly clear to me now that I am also on the other side of it as a helicopter pilot. Tip number one, time is money. Photo flights are expensive. Now, they're a little cheaper in a fixed wing airplane than they are in helicopters, but I would say hands down a helicopter is worth it. Now, the helicopter I fly is the Robinson R44. And an average hour-long flight time in that is anywhere between $650 and $850 an hour. Here's the catch. The hour begins when the helicopter lifts up off the ground. When the pilot uses a little stick called the collective to make the helicopter go up and down, as soon as that helicopter lifts up, your time starts. So that means you need to factor in your time from the airport to get to your destination and then back down to the airport, safely landing after your flight. So it's not a full hour. It's like, I compare it to a massage. I know those hour massages are not a full hour. They're factoring in something else. In a helicopter, it's a little more clear what they're doing, but it's not something that we often think of. Time is money, plan accordingly. Second, the great debate, doors on or doors off. Now, in the Robinson, we have 4 doors. The pilot flies in the right seat. So you basically are relegated to 3 choices. You have left front seat or either of the back seats. And depending on the helicopter company and current FAA regulations, you can fly with your door off. I prefer to do that. I prefer to do that in the dead of winter, in addition to, the middle of the summer, for a number of reasons. I got a prop. So the windscreen in a helicopter is not like the glass top on your kitchen table. I would compare it to plexiglass. So these things have seen better days. They are scratched. There's what looks like almost paint swirls in them. They can be dirty. I know I flew one time and one of our new instructors had cleaned them but had not done a good job of cleaning them. So all of my photographs look like, I don't know, like a dirty Windex commercial. It was awful. But when you have your doors off, then obviously there's nothing obstructing your view and there's nothing getting in between you and the subject, whatever you're shooting. So that is one definite benefit of flying doors off. In the R44, the rotor blades spin counterclockwise, like this. The tail rotor, because they spin counterclockwise, the tail rotor is on the left side. It spins forward about 4 to 5 times faster than the main rotor blades spin. So, tip 2, subpart A, flying doors off in the helicopter. The biggest concern is something flying out of that door because it's gonna likely end up in the tail rotor, which is gonna make for a bad day for everyone on that helicopter. You're gonna have to limit the amount of gear you bring with you. Even coming prepared with like a hoodie or whatever, you can't have any loose articles, loose items of clothing within the entire helicopter cabin. All right, tip 2, subpart B, doors off flying. Wind. Wind is a factor even if it is not windy outside. Even if the forecast, which tends to tell you the weather on the ground, which is not particularly helpful in the sky, but wind is a huge factor. And the longer your lens, say you're using a telephoto, the more it's going to introduce camera shake. And I will show you a couple examples of that here. And what it looks like when there is a ton of wind and really no way to stabilize your camera. I've come up with some creative fixes here and there. I know I've stabilized a lens with the seatbelt before, but wouldn't recommend that. Not the best idea. It doesn't even really work that well. But wind is definitely a consideration, and I will get into detail in a subsequent video about the best lenses to use, because they might not be what you think, but I would say you want to use something that is not a super long telephoto lens, because it's going to make for some blurry photos and some choppy video. And tip 2, subpart C. Now, we've all at some point in our lives stuck our arm out the car window when we are moving at a high rate of speed. And what happens when you stick your arm out the window? It goes and it gets sucked back. Same thing happens in a helicopter, except it's more severe. So even though the door is off and there's all this open sky and beautifulness below you, you want to do your best to stay in tight and not be leaning out that door. Tip number 3, and it's kind of a given, but still I think it's important. Use a fast shutter speed. Now, if you're up in the sky shooting landscapes, obviously they're not moving, but you are. And so it's something where you're gonna have to, make the judgment call yourself once you're up there and you see what conditions are. Say you're using a 24 to 70 millimeter lens, I would suggest starting with about 1/500th of a second shutter speed. And the longer the focal length, obviously the faster you're going to need to increase that shutter speed. Now, for the sake of simplicity, when you're up there and there's a bunch of elements going on and you're sort of out of your comfort zone, I would say the best way to maximize your efficiency up there is to shoot on shutter priority mode. And that way you don't really have to think about it, and you can adjust fire as conditions in the sky dictate. Now, for the counterpart to shutter speed, I told you you'd hear this again. That's why you gotta have this good foundation. But the other consideration to shutter speed is ISO. And to get the faster shutter speed like you need shooting out of an aircraft, and to have the depth of field that you need to get good clear photos, you're gonna wanna bump up your ISO. And I think a good safe starting point for your ISO is around 640. And depending on the light and the conditions, you can adjust fire up or down from there as needed. But you're gonna wanna bump it up initially to get started. Tip number 4, bring multiple cameras. Your flight will go quickly, and should something happen to one of your cameras, you'll still have your backup, and you will be oh so thankful that you did. Also, bringing multiple cameras gives you the ability to use different lenses with a range of focal lengths, and obviates the need to be continually switching lenses while flying at a high rate of speed in the sky. So multiple cameras are really important. Probably one of the best tips I can give you. Now, another component to having multiple cameras is you need to have, at a minimum, a camera strap or some sort of a harness on both of them, so you can ensure that they are going to stay with you and not go out the door into, you guessed it, the tail rotor. So when I fly, I just sling one over each shoulder and make sure it's secure to me. I don't have any lens caps or anything like that. Nothing unnecessary, but make sure that they are securely tethered to you. Tip number 5, everybody's favorite, can't escape it, light. Light is obviously incredibly important when you're shooting anywhere from anything. I would say the 2 best times of day to take a photo flight are either first light, early morning, or late afternoon, heading towards golden hour. When the sun starts getting higher in the sky, you run the risk of shadows sort of spreading out across the landscape. You also add in the element of glare off of any reflective surface, glass, water, whatever, and that can interfere with getting quality photos. Tip number 6, lens selection. This is going to play a big factor in the images you are able to capture. Now, going back to bringing more than one camera, if you're able to do this, it's going to be less of an issue, but it is something worth putting some thought into. Now, a good rule of thumb with a helicopter flight is anywhere between 500 feet to 2,000 feet above the ground. What I start with is a 24 to 70 millimeter lens and 70 to 200, and that gives me the ability to zoom in quite close if I want to get a good detail shot, while also giving me the ability to take wider scale landscape shots as well. Those two I find complement each other really well, and contrary to popular belief, you don't need a big tank of a lens. It's going to be harder to focus, it's going to be harder to hang on to, you're going to have more difficulty getting clear, crisp shots with a big giant lens. It's just not necessary up there. Like I said, it's personal preference all the way, but I bring the 24 to 70 and 70 to 200. Those are my staples. Also, most modern day lenses are going to be shooting at 20 megapixels or greater, so you will also have the ability in post to crop into an image if necessary. Tip number 7, you will thank me for this later. Take spare memory cards and batteries. You are going to be taking a lot of photographs, and your camera is going to burn through those batteries pretty quickly. I generally bring a big fast memory card in both of my cameras. The faster your memory card is, the faster your camera is going to be able to write your shots. In an hour-long photo flight, I can take upwards of 1,000 photos. I think on this last trip I took well over 1,000 in an hour, and the memory cards I brought, I think they were 256 gig. I had adequate room, but it's the peace of mind knowing you're not going to run out, your battery's not going to die. It's helpful. So 1, set yourself up for success. Start out with big fast memory cards in, say, both of your cameras, and as a backup, put them in a secure zipper compartment or pocket so they're not going to go anywhere, and you have the ability to safely change them out if necessary. On my A7R2, I bring my battery extender, so I have 2 batteries in here instead of 1, and I can burn through those in an hour-long flight pretty easily. So it's always nice just knowing that you have them. It's way better having them and not needing them than needing them and not having them. Tip number 8. You will thank me for this later, or you'll kick yourself for it later. One of the two. But don't stop shooting. I've been guilty of thinking like, oh, nailed it, that picture was killer, only to get back and find out that it was just a little bit blurry. So keeping in mind that aerial photography flights are an investment, you want to make the most of your time by shooting as much as possible. The slightest difference in weather or sun behind a cloud or a variation in an angle can really impact the quality of your image. Just having a little bit of a different perspective can give you a completely different image than the one you just shot. So keep that in mind and keep shooting. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful for you. If it was, please hit that like button, and if you haven't already, please smash that subscribe button. I will see you guys soon.